Guys, welcome to this session. My name is Abhilasha and I'll be taking you through some CSAT PYQs and a CSAT trend analysis for the past few years. CSAT is just around the corner and we did not want to waste a lot of time, and therefore today we are going to be starting off with the trend analysis and also covering a few PYQs as we've been doing over the past few weeks. If you're already here and you can see me and hear me, you can give me a yes or no. So am I audible and visible? I'd like to check with you about that. That's number one. My number two check will be, I hope you have liked the session already. Please hit the like button, of course. If you like it, you can like it. And also share the session with your friends and family so that they can also join in the fun. And also please make sure that you have subscribed to the channel, because if you haven't subscribed, then you'll not be able to participate in the chat. Then we're not able to communicate, and therefore I would love it if you would subscribe to the channel. Okay. So with that said, let's get started into the session and we will talk a little bit about the CSAT trends. Let's understand what it is all about, what is the exam doing, and then as usual, we will cover a few PYQs also. I hope you're ready for all of this. It's a wonderful journey today that we're going to be embarking upon. So let's get started and let's take a look at what this whole thing is all about. So if you were to look at CSAT and its patterns, and we are trying to examine what the CSAT pattern is all about, let's take a look. So if you look at this bar chart that I've got here, we've got data from 2019 to 2024. That means the year past. Now, if you look at this question distribution, the questions can be from maths and basic numeracy. They can be from logical and analytical reasoning. They can be from reading comprehension. Questions can be from data interpretation, and questions can be from decision making. However, if you look at this chart, what you will realize is that predominantly there are three sections that are figuring in the exam. The first one is maths and basic numeracy, which is this portion of the bar in yellow. Then you have logical and analytical reasoning, which is the portion of the bar in brown. And then you have reading comprehension, which is the portion right at the top in white. If you look at it, in 2019, we had 30 questions of reading comprehension, which went down to 26 questions in the subsequent year in 2020, then had stayed for 27 questions in 2021 and 22. And then went down by one question, 26 to 2023, and then again it came back to in 2024 to 27 questions. So I'm assuming that the question paper is going to stay, reading comprehension section is probably going to stay at around 26 or 27, which means 27 out of 80 questions would be a very good chunk of syllabus. So that's more than 35% of your paper coming from the reading comprehension section. So it is going to be important for you that you figure out the reading comprehension and that you do very well in your reading comprehension. If you have to look at specific sections, then here is a breakup of all the sections and over the years. So in 2009, from 2019 to 2024, let's just look at each one of these years. So English had 30 questions, like I told you, and reasoning had 18 questions. In 2022, 26 questions from English and 12 questions from reasoning. 2021, 27 and 22. So the portion of reasoning went up pretty well in 2021, from 12 to 22, a jump of 10 questions. That was huge. So what the section that went down was your quant section or your math section, from 42 to 31, a down of 11 questions, and then it went to 36 and then went back up to 43, and currently it's at 38. So one thing we can see from this trend is that questions between maths and reasoning are going up and down. Sometimes you have more questions in maths, sometimes you have less questions in maths, but between maths and reasoning there is a change in numbers. But English has generally stayed standard at 26 or 27 questions. There haven't been much changes in the English section configuration. So between 26 and 27, that is where the CSAT has stayed in the English section. So 30 questions was there in 2019. That's 5 years ago. I don't think it is going to come back. So we are assuming that 26 to 27 questions is what you will get in your English section. The reasoning might fluctuate between and go up or go down, but English is going to remain constant at 26 or 27. So expect that and expect nothing else. Now, if you have to look at the logical reasoning and look at the difficulty level and the breakup, so from 2024 to 2019, there were 4 easy questions in 2024, 8 moderate questions, and 3 difficult questions. So our task was to look at these easy questions and to attempt the moderate questions. The difficult questions, of course, were the questions that you had to just skip and not bother about. But there were plenty. So 8 and 4, 12 questions that you could have attempted fairly easily, and that makes a hell of a difference. If you look at 23, there were 7 questions and there were 4 difficult questions. So if you look at the breakup of this paper 2023, logical reasoning was pretty difficult here, right? Because fewer questions, there's just 11 questions. Out of that, 4 questions were pretty difficult. So that means the paper was on the difficult side for logical reasoning. Again, if you look at 2022, there were only 2 difficult questions. Similarly, in 2021 also, there are 2 difficult questions. The breakup of easy questions went from 5 to 9 from 2022 to 21, and then back to 5 again and 6 again. So between 4 to 5 questions you should get, which you will be able to solve in 30 seconds or thereabouts. Then there will be this host of other questions, 8, 6, 5, 10, which will take you, let's say, another 30-40 seconds, so maybe a minute or so to solve. And then there are the difficult questions, which are not that many, but they will be there. So these are the ones that you can leave, and the easy and the moderate questions are the ones that you should attempt to solve. If we look at English, now the English questions, which is all reading comprehension for you. Now, the tricky thing here in English is that the questions are divided between, let's say, critical reasoning and general English, right? So when they ask you those basic general English questions, what are they asking is, what is the main idea of the passage? That is the question that is mostly asked in your exam. So that is the basic English type of question. And then you have the critical reasoning type of questions, which is what is the assumption of the passage? Right? What is the inference of the passage? These are the 2 questions that they are asking you. What is the most rational inference? What is the assumption? These are the 2 types of questions which can be tricky. In the English side of it, in the reading comprehension side of it, the questions are all there. But the main idea questions are quite doable, because once you've read the passage, you do understand what the author is trying to say. The passages here are not that long, so that actually gives you an edge. So if you were to look at the difficulty level here, now easy questions in 2024 were 4, in 23 were 10, 7, 12, 8, and 10. So if you were to look at the breakup, then the easy questions are only 4, the moderate questions are 11, and the difficult questions are 12. So there are 12 difficult questions, which makes this a pretty tough paper. So out of your 27 questions, you have 12 questions which are difficult, which will take you time to think and study, and then you will be able to do. There are only 15 questions which are fairly doable, as opposed to 18 questions here, 15 questions here, 21 questions here, 20 questions here, and 22 questions here. So these papers, the doable questions were much more than the non-doables or the difficult questions. 2024, I hope, is an aberration, but we also see the same thing happening in 2022. But let us hope and see that your paper is going to be a slightly more moderate or moderate paper, because always remember, a moderate paper is always better for students. If the paper is difficult, then the number of questions that you will be able to attempt will be far lesser. So, and if it is very easy, then everybody will end up attempting everything. That makes the difficulty level or the scores go up. So therefore we want a moderate paper so that we are able to do as many questions that we can, and there aren't too many difficult questions, so you can leave enough questions also. With a paper like this, the questions that you can leave is just too many, that you have to leave could be just too many, which is not a very good situation for us. All right, I'm hoping that this paper in 2025 will be a moderate, fairly moderate paper, and that you will have good number of questions in the easy section and a good number of questions in the moderate section also. The difficult section, I hope, will have fewer questions. We have seen 8 and 12 questions, so I'm assuming at least 8 questions should be there. If there are lesser than that, then that will be something really good for you. I hope this trend analysis will help you in your exam. Be ready for some 26 to 27 questions. All right, let's get to the PYQ portion of our session today. This is the 7th part of your PYQs. Let's talk about them. Here is your question. These are from CSAT 2023. Okay, so let's take a minute, read the passage, and then we will discuss it. I'm going to pause I'm going to mute myself, keep the video on. You take a minute and read, and then we'll. All right, I assume you've read the passage. Let's take a look. Pharmaceutical patents grant protection to the patentee for the duration of the patent term. The patentees enjoy the liberty to determine the price of medicines, which is time limited due to the period of monopoly, but could be unaffordable to the public. Such patent protection offered to the patentees is believed to benefit the public over the longer term through innovations and R&D. Although it comes at a cost in the nature of higher price for the patented medicine. The patent regime and price protection through a legally validated high price for the medicine during the currency of the patent provides the patentee with a legitimate mechanism to get returns on the cost incurred in innovation and research. Yes, there is a lot of cost that is incurred during creation of a medicine. Sometimes the trials themselves take 10 to 15 years. So that period of time while this medicine is being created or tested is a very long time. So of course the patentee would want some profits to come out of that entire R&D process. Let's take a look at this question. Question number 1. What is the assumption that is valid? So let's take a look. The first one is patent protection given to patentees puts a huge burden on public's purchasing power in accessing patented medicines. Well, that is right, because the higher price for the patented medicine means that the purchasing power is burdened. So therefore, 1 is a valid assumption. Let's look at 2. Dependence on other countries for pharmaceutical products is a huge burden for developing and poor countries. We don't know if the poor countries and developing countries are dependent on other countries. The passage has not mentioned or offered any such detail that you can assume this. So let's eliminate that. Let's look at 3. Providing medicines to the public at affordable prices is a key goal during the public health policy design in many countries. Again, we don't know what is the key goal. This cannot be assumed from the passage also. So let's eliminate. Let's look at option number 4. Governments need to find an appropriate balance between the rights of the patentees and the requirements of the patients. Yes, this can be assumed because there has to be some sort of a balance that is being done. So 4 can be a good choice. So here options 1 and 4 are a good choice. Let's take a look. 1 and 2 no, 1 and 4 yes. Okay, so the correct answer is going to be B, 1 and 4. I hope you got that. Let's look at the second passage again. I'm giving you 1 minute and then we will discuss this one. India should ensure the growth of digital economy while keeping personal data of citizens secure and protected. So we want the digital economy growth, but we want the data to be secure. No one will innovate in a surveillance and oriented environment or in a place where the individual's personal information is compromised. People don't want to innovate then. The ultimate control of data must reside with the individuals who generate it. They should be unable to use, restrict, or monetize it as they wish. Therefore, data protection laws should enable the right kind of innovation, one that is user centric and privacy protecting. All right, let's look at the question. Here we are. So again, the assumptions have been asked. Let's identify what are the assumptions. Protection of privacy is not just a right, but it has value to the economy. Yes, because no one will innovate in a surveillance-oriented environment. So therefore, privacy is important also. So one can be assumed. There is a fundamental link between privacy and innovation. Yes, because the passage says that you have to keep the data of the citizen secure and protected, and then it also says that no one will innovate in a surveillance oriented environment. So that means there is a connection between the two, right? So therefore 2 also is a valid answer. So let's take a look. Option C, both 1 and 2 are going to be the right answer here. All right, let's look at the next one. Here's passage 3. Again, 1 minute for you to solve, and then we will read and we will. I'm waiting for you guys to finish reading, and then we will discuss this. All right, let's get started. So this one says sourcing food from non-agricultural lands, which is uncultivated systems such as forests, wetlands, pastures, etc. In addition to agricultural land, enables a systemic approach to food consumption. It allows rural and tribal communities to sustain themselves for the whole year and steer clear of natural disasters and season-induced shortfalls of agricultural food. Now, since the productivity of trees is often more resilient to adverse weather conditions than annual crops, forest food often provide a safety net during periods of food shortages caused by crop failure. So when there is a crop failure, there will be fruits on the trees, there will be food in the forest. So forest food also make important contribution during seasonal crop production gaps. So food that you're getting from the trees can be a systemic, can be an addition to your food consumption from agricultural food. Let's look at the question also. So the question here is, what is the most logical and rational message that is conveyed by the author? So what is the author trying to tell you here? Food yielding trees should replace other trees in rural and tribal areas and community owned lands. The author is not trying to say that you should get the food yielding trees and replace the other trees, because how else? Then do you take away all the trees and just put food yielding trees? That doesn't make sense. And that's not what the author is trying to say. So, A, let's do away with. Food security cannot be ensured in India with the present practice of conventional agriculture. Again, please understand, cannot be ensured is an extreme option, and therefore that doesn't really work for us here. So eliminate option B. Let's look at option C. Wastelands and degraded areas in India should be converted into agroforestry system to help the poor. Again, are we talking about wastelands and degraded areas? Please understand, the passage had spoken about wetlands and not about wastelands, right? So therefore C is not what the author is trying to tell you. This is a very tricky question, as in this is a very tricky option because there is a very short, small distraction or distortion that is happening here. So the minute you see W and land, you think W and land, but here it was wetland, here it is wasteland. That's going to confuse you. So be careful. Agro ecosystem should be developed in addition to or along with conventional agriculture. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. That you create an ecosystem where it's not just conventional agriculture, but other things that sort of supplement it. That's what the author is trying to tell you also. So D is a good choice of answer for us. Okay. All right. Let's look at the next one, passage number 4. 1 minute for you to read. All right. Let's read this one. So while awareness of the use and misuse and abuse of antibiotics is common knowledge, as is the impact of dosing poultry with antibiotics. The environmental impact of antibiotics manufacturing companies not treating their waste has not been discussed at any length and seriousness thus far. Pollutions from antibiotic factories is fueling the rise of drug-resistant infections. The occurrence of drug-resistant bacteria surrounding the pharma manufacturing plants is well known. So this is a problem also. Let's look at the question. What is the most logical, practical, and rational message? No, logical and practical message that is conveyed. It is necessary to put proper effluent treatment protocols in place. Well, yes, that is what probably the author is trying to tell you. It is necessary to promote environmental awareness. But how will environmental awareness help the people who are already resistant to bacteria or who are being affected by effluent from a pharma plant? So the problem is that of the pharma plant, and that is what we need to do away with. So B, not so much. Spread of drug-resistant bacteria cannot be done away with as it is inherent in modern medical care. No, it is not inherent. This is very extreme, right? So please eliminate option number C. Look at option D. Pharma manufacturing companies should be set up in remote rural areas away from crowded towns and cities. But there also, the effluent treatment plant should be there. So therefore, D also doesn't work. The problem is the treatment of the waste from antibiotics manufacturing companies. That waste has to go away. If it is not being treated, there's a problem. So option number A is the best choice for us. Okay. All right. Let's go to the next one. Here's your next passage. Again, I'm going to give you a minute to read and then we will discuss. All right, I think 1 minute is approximately up. Let's take a look. If you need a little more time, then you can pause the video and watch it, right? So benefits of good quality school education accrue only when the students complete and leave school after having acquired the getaway skills, no? Like one learns to walk before running, similarly, one picks up advanced skills only after picking the basic foundational skill. The advent of the knowledge economy poses new challenges, and one of the severe consequences of having an uneducated workforce will be our inability to keep pace with the global economy. Without a strong learning foundation at the primary level, there can be no improvement in higher education or skill development. So, you need to have a strong foundation at the primary level. Let's read the question. What is the crux of the passage? The crux of the passage is that you need to have very strong foundational language. So to become a global power, India needs to invest in universal quality education. Yes, that is something that we can take as an answer. India is unable to become a global power because it is not focusing on promoting knowledge economy. We are not talking about the knowledge economy. We are talking about the basics of education. So B is actually not the crux of the passage. Our education system should focus more on imparting skills during higher education. No, the passage said foundational education. So not C, it's irrelevant for us. Parents of many school children are illiterate and are unaware of the benefits of quality education. But it's not just the parents who need to be aware. The government could do a lot about imparting education. So therefore, that's where it should come from. And also the passage does not talk about the parents. So not D. The best answer here, therefore, is going to be option number A. I hope you got that. Let's look at the next one. Here's passage 6. Take a minute, read, and we will try and solve it together. All right, let's take a look at this one. So, scientists studied the vernal window. Vernal window means the autumn side of it. Transition period from winter to the growing season. They found that warmer winters with less snow resulted in a longer lag time between spring events and a more protracted vernal window. This change in the spring timetable has ecological, social, and economic consequences for agriculture, fisheries, and tourism. As the ice melts earlier, the birds don't return, causing a delay or lengthening in the springtime ecological events. So, if the vernal window is longer, then the spring doesn't happen properly, and then therefore subsequently everything else is disturbed. Let's take a look at our question. What are the assumptions here? The first one, global warming is causing spring to come early and for longer duration. Can we really say that is causing spring to come early? Yes. Also lengthening in springtime ecological events, so therefore one is valid. Let's look at the second one. Early spring and longer period of spring is not good for the bird population. We don't know if it is good or not. So therefore not two. So one will be the only one that will be right. All right, let's look at the seventh passage, guys. Again, we'll take a minute, read it, and then we'll take it forward from there. All right, let's look at this passage and we'll try and read. So it says a global analysis of nitrogen use efficiency. A measure of the amount of nitrogen a plant takes in to grow versus what is left behind as pollution says that using too much fertilizers will lead to increased pollution of waterways and the air. So if you use too much fertilizer, there's more Water is polluted, air is polluted. Currently, the global average for nitrogen use efficiency is approximately 0.4. So 40% of the total nitrogen added to cropland goes into the harvested crop, while 60% is lost. More than half of the world's population is nourished by food grown with fertilizers containing synthetic nitrogen, which is needed to produce high yield crops. Now, plants take the nitrogen they need to grow, and the excess is left in the ground, water, and air. So, there is significant emission of nitrous oxide from that, which is a potent greenhouse and ozone depleting gas. And there's other forms of nitrogen pollution also, including eutrophication of lakes and rivers and contamination of river water. So there's a lot of problem because of this also. All right, let's look at the question here and let's look at the options. So what is the most logical, rational, and crucial message that is implied by the passage? An enhanced efficiency of use of nitrogen is imperative for both food production and environment. And I can put a star on this, but let's go and look at the other options. Production of synthetic nitrogen fertilizers cannot be stopped as it will adversely affect global food security. Well, it cannot be stopped is too extreme. If there were replacements, we could stop it, but that is not the message that the author is saying. Please understand, the passage was not about nitrogen fertilizers per se. Alternatives to crops that require excessive nitrogen should be identified and cultivated. Yes, but again, that was not the crux of the passage. The passage was more about what's the problem. Conventional agriculture using synthetic fertilizers should be replaced with agroforestry, agroecosystems, and organic farming. Again, did the passage take you there? Not at all. So here the best answer is going to be option A, that if you can use nitrogen better, not have that 60% lost, and have it go into the crop, that would be better. So therefore, A is the best answer for us among all of these options. Let's now go to the last passage for today. I think this will be the last passage. Anyway, let us check and take a minute, read, and then we will take a look at this question. All right, let's look at this passage and we'll try and answer the question here. So, along with sustainable lifestyle, climate justice is regarded as a significant principle in environmental parlance. In the environmental area sphere, climate justice is important. Both principles have bearings on the political and economic choices of the nation. So far, in our climate change summits or compacts, both principles have eluded consensus. Justice in the judicial sense is well defined. However, in the context of climate change, it has scientific as well as socio-political connotations. So it's not just science, it is also social, political, there's so many connotations to it. The crucial question in the next few years will be how resources, technologies, and regulations are used to support the victims of climate change. So that will become so important. Justice in climate is not confined to actions relating to mitigation, so reduction, but also includes a wider notion of support for adaptation. You have to adapt to climate change and compensate for loss and damage. So all of that has to be taken care of. All right, let's look at question number 8. What is the question? What is the most logical, rational, and crucial message that is conveyed by the passage? Climate justice should be ingrained in detail in the rules of all the new climate compacts and agreements. I'll put a star on this. Yes, it is important. Environmental resources are unevenly distributed and exploited. We did not speak about environmental resources, so eliminate. There is an impending issue of dealing with a huge number of climate change victims or climate refugees. Again, the passage was not talking of the climate change victims, except that there have to be their justice has to be served to them. So not C. Look at the climate change in all its connotations is mostly due to developed countries, and therefore their burden should be more. Again, whose burden should be more or less was not mentioned. So therefore D is also not the right answer. So here the best answer is going to be option number A for you. Okay. I hope you got that. All right. So here are the correct answers for all your questions. Okay, if there are any questions that you wish to ask me, feel free to ask. If you don't want to ask now, you can also ask me through messaging in the chat box. So feel free to drop a message into the chat box. We get in touch with you, or we will try and answer your question as soon as possible. All right, with that, I'm at the end of today's session. Thank you so much for joining in. I hope today's session was helpful, and I hope you will benefit from this, right? If you like the session, then all you need to do is hit the like button, and also to share the session with your friends who are also writing this exam, and also remember to subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. Adios, mere amigos. Milte hain jaldi hi, and yes, continue to have great luck on your journey to the exam.